Known by the company we keep, by the ones who go round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we'll lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Our opening words this morning come from comedian Trevor Noah, who grew up as a mixed-race child in South Africa and writes about his experiences in his memoir, Born a Crime. People always lecture the poor. Take responsibility for yourself. Make something of yourself. But with what raw materials are the poor to make something of themselves? People love to say, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. What they don't say is, and it would be nice if you gave him a fishing rod. That's the part of the analogy that's missing.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living. Ours is no care of and of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of living. Ours is no care of and of despair. Come, yet again come. The words of this song are adapted from Sufi mystic Jalaluddin Rumi. When Rumi was just a small boy, he had to flee his homeland because of political unrest and impending war. And so he traveled with his family to what at the times would have felt like the other ends of the earth. He settled down in the city of Konya, where he grew up to become a religious teacher to people of many traditions, but deeply grounded in his Sufi Muslim faith. As we sing the song of welcome and invitation, let's remember that it was written by an immigrant. It was written by a Muslim political refugee, someone fleeing violence and seeking out a community of love and security. Let's welcome each other into this space of love and safety, and think also of those who are still on the journey. We're going to try with a slightly different rhythm. Here we go. Come, come, whoever you are, wander, worship, lover of leaving. Ours is no care of and of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wander, worship, lover of leaving. Ours is no in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart, one more, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worship, lover of leaving, ours is no care of and of despair. Come yet again, come, come yet again, come, come yet again, come yet again, come.
I want to light this chalice today. I want to light in gratitude. In gratitude for the many people here and all elsewhere who do everything they can to make our world a better place. Children who in their young age, and sometimes their unfiltered questioning, transform the world. Let's be grateful for all of those. I also like this chalice in hope. Hope that things will be made different, improved by all our efforts, so that our sadness will not remain the same. Though our longing for peace may continue to move us towards a more peaceful world, a more equitable world, a more just world.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today in this unusual service. Today's service has been comprised by the UU Hysterical Society. No, that is not a mistake. The UU Hysterical Society uses humor and really kind of irreverent or other angles at understanding who we are as Unitarian Universalists and how we approach theology in this world. So today's service also will be supporting the Flaming Chalice International, which is a Unitarian Universalist organization that currently has projects in Burundi. And in particular, they're working on a water infrastructure project so that the women who would go and fetch the water would no longer need to walk the 6 miles daily to get their water. So that's what today's service is about, and how we are bringing good to the world on the other side of the planet, because we're all one planet and we're all one family. So for today's announcements, firstly, a special welcome to those who might be popping in for the first or second time and are wondering what is going on. So a special welcome to you. And we have a virtual visitor form that we will invite you to fill out. We'll have that in the chat. And then, so yes, for today's announcements, firstly, as we're starting to gather together in physical space again, we really need to honor consensual hugs. So last Sunday at the flower celebration at the back patio of the church, I actually witnessed somebody going in for a hug, and they said, "Are you hugging?" And the person said no, and they were so excited they still went and hugged. So we need to be especially careful as we're coming together to respect one another's boundaries so that everybody will continue to feel safe and that we don't scare off people by our enthusiastic hugs. And believe me, I know how hard it is to restrain myself sometimes. So we're in this together, but again, consensual hugs. Okay, so this Thursday, there's an interesting program from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. It'll be at 4 p.m. on Zoom. It's a free program, and it is a Human Rights Award. And the program will feature Sweet Honey in the Rock and also Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley from the Boston area. She's a representative for Massachusetts. So that should be, I think, a really exciting program. And I just think it's good for us to increase our awareness of what's going on in the wider Unitarian Universalist world. So next Saturday, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion group invites you to a celebration of Juneteenth, which will be at Ponderosa Park on 15th Street from 11 till 4. I believe the times have been brought in. It used to be from 10 to 6. Anyway, 11 to 4 is what I've seen recently. There will be a volunteer sign up in this week's ACE. So this is one of the ways that we can join with our other neighbors in the community and celebrate the end of slavery and continue to move forward to a more equitable world, even in our community here in Central Oregon. So that's next Saturday on June 19th. Next, a week from tomorrow, so Monday, June 21st, Heather McNeil, our own very skillful storyteller, invites you to the auction item. There are still seats available. The program is called The Celtic Breeze, Stories of the Other World from Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. So it'll be at 6:30 on the patio. And because it's an auction item, you can still purchase your seat for $20. You can pay when you get there. And in an exchange with Heather, I said, I might just wear sparkles. I feel like dressing up. And she said, those fairy folk, they love the sparkles. So anyway, I can't do her accents, but Monday, the 21st. Then on Tuesday, the 22nd at 6 p.m., Rochelle Indra, our very dynamic life coach, invites you to an open discussion about play. And because, yes, play is the worship theme for June. So that's 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 22nd. RSVPs to me are helpful, just so that we'll know that, that there's interest and that we'll go forward with that. So then the following Saturday on June 26th, our art resources team invites you to art on the patio. Now it's important that you sign up for the slot. They have 1 hour slots from 10 and 11, 12, and 1. So they want to make sure that the folks going to the art show will be staggered throughout the day. And so Susan Carr is taking those RSVPs. Her email address is also in the weekly ACE. So we're also looking for some hosts, home hosts, both for 2 circle suppers. We thought we'd see what the temperature is within the congregation to meet for circle suppers again. So we're looking at Friday the 23rd and also July 25th. And so there's information about that in the ACE. And then also Zooming together. So just like what we're doing today for worship service, but if you wanted to invite people into your homes, and we're looking at June 27th, that'll be General Assembly Sunday. And then also the following Sunday on July 4th, Reverend Scott will be speaking that Sunday. So far we have 1 host volunteer for circle suppers and 1 host volunteer for the Zooming together. So we'll see whether they both will launch. Lastly, I just want to say that the Bethlehem Inn dinner for June still needs mashed potatoes, milk, vegetables. Anyway, the sign up is in the ACE, and this is our monthly way of serving our transitional housing community. In other words, people who are either homeless or who are living for the time being at the Bethlehem Inn. So there's a lot going on, and I do hope that pertinent to this month's theme of play, that you give yourself time to play. Blessings on your day.
This is a story about saying something when things aren't right. I don't know about your family, but my family has been doing a lot of that lately. Some of you might have experienced going with a parent to a march or to hold signs, or even been part of writing a letter or an email. And I'm sure all of you have had the experience of seeing something not quite right and saying something about it. I want to tell you the story, the true story, of 2 children who did just that. I don't know their real names, but their nicknames were Bukuru and Toyi. They were 7 and 9 years old, and they lived in a very poor country in Africa called Burundi. And they lived in a small hut of very few rooms with a grass roof in a land that was always warm and green. They spent their days mostly running around outside, playing, taking care of the family's herd of cows. And one morning, a little over 5 years ago, they were out in the fields in the middle of the day, and they saw a group of men arrive in cars. The men had guns, and they also had a man with them who looked like maybe he wasn't choosing to be there. Talking quickly, the men ushered the other man into the hut, and they closed the door. That man was indeed their prisoner. In fact, he was a Unitarian minister by the name of Reverend Fulgence Ndadigimana. We'll call him Fulgence. Fulgence was the minister of the Unitarian church nearby. The Unitarian church had been doing exactly what so many UU churches in North America do. They had seen things going on in their country, and they were saying something. They were going to demonstrations, just like so many of us do. Now, in Burundi, the government responds more angrily to demonstrations than they do here, and it became very dangerous to speak up. People were being seriously hurt, so the Unitarian Church did something very brave. They bought some cell phones and some vests that said Human Rights Observer, and they began recording what was going on. It was probably this that caused those men to take Fulgence as prisoner. Now the kids, they didn't know any of that, of course, but they did know something wasn't right. They could feel it. So at lunchtime, they went to the local police station and they explained what they'd seen. You can imagine, 7 and 9 years old, how nervous they must have felt walking into the police station all by themselves. But the policemen were nice. They said they'd go see what was happening, so the boys went back to the field with their cows. But at the end of the day, before going home, they checked one more time, back at the hut to make sure things were okay, and the police hadn't kept their word. They hadn't gone to check on things. So the boys returned to the police station, and they said something again, and they were able to convince a policeman to come. The police arrived just as the men were taking Fulgence outside, saying they were going to kill him, and they stopped that from happening. They took everyone to the station, they sorted things out, and Fulgence tells me that he believes that if it weren't for those boys saying something, he probably would not have lived. It wasn't easy for Fulgence after that day. Soon after, he was arrested, and then he was sent to prison, and again, people helped him. Unitarian Universalists saw what was happening, and they said something. People of all ages, kids too, wrote letters to Fulgence's government to say what was happening was not okay. Fulgence knew about all this. Even when he was in prison and very afraid, he knew there were Unitarian Universalists all over the world working together to save him. At night, when it was dark and he couldn't sleep, he would picture the flaming chalice in his mind, and that helped him hold on to hope. After 9 days, he was released temporarily, but he knew they were coming for him again, so a friend drove him straight to the airport. He didn't pack his toothbrush. He didn't say goodbye to his family. He made it across the border, and eventually he made it to Canada as a refugee. Now he works as a minister in Canada, and he also runs a charity called Flaming Chalice International, which helps the people in the region that he comes from. Now it's Fulgence who is able to see injustice and do something to fix it, with the support of UUs from all over the world. But even today, Fulgence has never forgotten those two children, 7 and 9 years old, who saw something that they knew wasn't right.
We'll have the slide up shortly to share together the Children's Covenant. So join me in saying this after that really moving story. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved. So as artists would tell us, the palette of our life includes bright colors and dark shadows and hues. And so today we have an opportunity to paint together from the palette of our lives. We can share our joys and sorrows in the chat. So blessings on us all as we open our hearts and share what's been going on.
When my friend Celeste was joining our congregation in Saskatoon about 10 years ago, I was one of the committee members charged with orienting him to our congregation. Celeste grew up in Masai Mara in Kenya. He grew up exactly as many generations of Maasai before him did. No English, no reading, no writing, no electricity, unlimited exercise, time with friends, fresh air, sunshine. In early adulthood, he fell in love with a Canadian who was visiting, and they had a family, and that's how he came to be in a church in the snowy depths of Canada, where he and I became friends. I remember at the newcomer member dinner, he was joining our church, and I was showing him the chart of how our church works. It had, the board and the president and the voting and the committee on ministry, all the stuff. And I showed him this very complex chart because I felt it was important that he be well informed about our governance. And he looked carefully at the chart for a long time. He listened to my explanation, and then he shook his head. He said, "Nope." I said, "Really? This is how we make decisions?" And he said, "No. Usually the mothers make the decisions while you are watching the children and talking. I have seen it." And I said, "Yeah, but there's also this." And he looked at it for a little bit longer, and then he said slowly, "This looks like a lot of work." I explained that it is, but it's important that we do it to create community. "You don't have to do this for community," he said. "How you have community is you bring many people together, and then they make community. Many people make community without these," he struggled for the word, "committees." It was like he was trying to explain to me that 2 + 2 = 4 because that's what 4 is. It doesn't need a committee to be 4, it's just 4. When we first arrived in Kenya 3 years ago, the first thing Celeste did was drive us to the plaque at the center of his village, haul us out of the Jeep to stand around it. The plaque marked the death of a white tourist a few years back. We read it. It was in English. It told the story of a man waking up in the early hours of the morning, heading out for a walk, and being mauled by a wild elephant. The plaque, as I read it, was about the danger of African elephants. Celeste saw the cause of death a little differently, and he explained to me, "This man had a Maasai guard, like you have a Maasai guard. This man did not listen to his Maasai guard and went for a short walk by himself, and an elephant killed him. When Muzungu people do not listen to their Maasai guard, they die right away." Muzungu is the word they used for white people, and it really came in handy for me. Every time I couldn't see something like a nest of birds 3 feet away from my face that the guide was pointing to, I'd point to my eyes and I would go, "Muzungu." And every time I did something silly, I'd use the word Muzungu, and they'd all shrug like, "What are you going to do?" Being Muzungu meant being under constant supervision in case I decided to pet a snake or cuddle a lion cub or something like that. Muzungu could not be left unattended except in their tent with a tour guide standing outside to make sure they didn't do something crazy like wake up early and go for a walk by themselves. I often wondered about my Maasai guard, who followed me everywhere, carrying this spear that to my eyes was basically a pointy stick. His job was to protect me from lions, and he was paid reasonably well for it, reasonably well for a no-lion day, because I couldn't shake the feeling that if a lion did approach, his wages would no longer be sufficient for the task. I asked Celeste about this. "How do we know he wouldn't run away?" I said. Celeste looked at me like I had a cabbage for a head. "You were under his protection," he answered. "Yeah, but he doesn't know me or care about me, so why would he?" "He's Maasai," Celeste answered. "You're under his protection." There was a pause, and then Celeste repeated, "He's Maasai," as though this should explain it all. That night, my sleep was interrupted by what I can only describe as a moaning, growling kerfuffle of noises. I was nestled into the tent I'd mentioned earlier. Very nice tent, nicest you've ever been in, had a flush toilet. Was, though, still made of canvas. Thicker canvas than in Canada, sure, but not lion-level thick. Not even scissors-level thick. I tried to tell myself if I was in the tent, the lion would have no idea I was there. That required a lot of mental discipline to keep believing. And it wasn't just the lions that had arrived. Some other creature was out there, some new African creature I'd never heard before, making this terrified, mysterious, bleeding, moaning sound. And there were the sounds of men, several men, yelling to each other in the local language. And I lay perfectly still, with the dark inside the canvas walls so absolute it felt like a washcloth covering my face, and I swallowed my terror. And in the morning, I learned that the mysterious new animal was, in fact, a cow. I've never heard cows being afraid. Turns out when cows are afraid for their lives, they don't say moo moo like in the old MacDonald song. Afraid cows don't sound like moo moo, much like humans afraid for their lives don't sound like, "Hi there, pleased to meet you." The cow had wandered away from the herd in a nearby village, and a team of Maasai men had tracked it, and they found it eventually, but they found it at the exact same moment that the lion found it, which was after dark, and we're talking like can't see your hand in front of your face kind of dark. The noises I heard were them stepping between the cow and the lion and shooing it away with their weapons, which I cannot emphasize this part enough, were basically machetes and pointy sticks, used largely without the benefit of sight. They won this battle. Lions are afraid of Maasai men, and it eventually retreated. Celeste says this is usually how it goes. Lions are afraid of the Maasai and will kill a Maasai warrior very rarely. He then immediately qualified kill a Muzungu on sight, though, every time, no reason at all, before I got any ideas. I was too hung up on this word rarely to absorb his lecture. Wait, I said, you said very rarely, like meaning not never? Meaning sometimes someone does die? Not often, said Celeste, which is not the same as never. I couldn't imagine risking my life like that, I said. Well, they're Maasai, Celeste answered, like it was a complete sentence. Then, a Maasai can't give up on his cow. Suddenly, it all slid into place. It wasn't just about the one cow. Suddenly, my Muzungu eyes could see the big picture. It's been explained to me that Maasai have survived for centuries through their reputation for bravery and self-sufficiency and honor. They have a reputation for never giving up, and the fact that everyone knows that is one of their greatest assets. The lions do not tangle with the Maasai. The neighboring Kikuyu tribe do not tangle with the Maasai. Even Muzungus didn't tangle with the Maasai, and the Muzungus tangled with everybody. In modern times, Muzungus are not adversaries in the same way. It's quite complicated. They are threats, but they're also tourists who bring lots of money, which they exchange for a chance to look at wild animals safely. And so the Maasai reputation is still a communal asset. The reason my guard would protect me at all costs was because if one Maasai lets one tourist die, everyone's reputation suffers. The whole region's economy gets put into jeopardy. Everyone's livelihood and independence was at stake. He'll protect me, I said, because I'm like a cow to him? Celeste nodded. A Maasai can't give up on his cow, because a Maasai can't give up on his reputation. Independence. His Maasai identity is how generations of his people have survived. My Muzungu eyes were improving. But I felt a cold knot forming in my stomach because I wasn't there as a tourist on safari. I wasn't there for the animals. I was there working on behalf of the Altumo Well Project. The Altumo Well Project began in my home community, raising money for a well in Celeste's village. Over time, the well had grown into a garden and a community center, and there was a budding relationship between the two communities. And I was here as a part of that relationship to talk to the Maasai about some challenges to their way of life. In recent years, the Kenyan government had divided the land and deeded it to individual Maasai. So the Maasai couldn't move to chase the rainy season anymore. This was taking a toll on the livestock, half of which had died in the last year. Also, without the regular wars with the Kikuyu, the Maasai population was growing, and finite land can't sustain a large population on a livestock-based diet. Add to that the challenges of global warming, which were huge for the Maasai and hitting them really hard. And it was clear that the outside world was finally reaching the Maasai, and they needed help in adapting to it. It had sounded really simple back home in Saskatoon. As the saying goes, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. I was here to tell the Maasai that they needed new skills and guide them in their transformation. When the task was in front of me, though, it felt totally different. I was just one more white person arriving to tell the Maasai about how they needed to give up their cows and embrace the future. One more colonizer telling them that this time was different, just like every colonizer had told them before me. I was going to say this like I was some kind of expert, shadowed by a Maasai guard who had to follow me to keep me from trying to stick a green mamba in my mouth or some other idiotic thing. Here, Muzungus were just cash cows you had to keep from killing themselves long enough so they could get their little snaps for Instagram or whatever it was and go home again. Teach them to fish. What kind of arrogance was that? As we rode to the well site on the day of the big meeting, I felt a new feeling of unease in my stomach. I found myself thinking back to the advice of my friend Fulgence and hoping to find something to hold on to. Reverend Fulgence Ndadigimana reminded me so much of my friend Celeste, which is a little strange because they are from polar opposite backgrounds. Fulgence went to boarding school, had a degree, lived in the city, worked for not-profits in addition to running his church on the side. as I talked about in the Story for All Ages. He went on to found the Unitarian Church in Burundi, later a UU not-for-profit in Canada, so he grew up at the center of colonialism. Selesh grew up in one of the last pockets of successful resistance to it. Even though they were very different, the three of us met anyways for a meeting before my trip. Fulgence brought all kinds of experience in not-for-profits and community development, working with groups from many regions of Africa. And Selesh brought in-depth knowledge of the Maasai and all his relationships within the region. And I brought, well, I was the president of Ultumo at the time, and I knew a lot about committee structures, Robert's Rules, great with Robert's Rules. There are not many statements you can make about the entire continent of Africa that are true all over, but not a fan of Robert's Rules might be one of them. So I mostly listened. And the meeting that unfolded was nothing like I was used to. Fulgence asked question after question, detailed things about everything from how the Maasai chose whose hut was built where to the ratio of goats to cows. He frequently expressed admiration for the Maasai, whose spirit is admired all over Africa, but he mostly just listened. And at the end, when Selesh asked for advice, Fulgence said, "The Maasai have always solved their own problems. The most important thing is for the Maasai to continue to believe that they can solve their own problems. The most important thing is to listen and help as you are asked to help in only the ways that you are asked to help." I thought about this during the Jeep ride. I thought about this as the women filed in for our meeting, as I cooed at babies and sipped at tea and offered granola bars from my bag. I observed that every woman arriving put 10 shillings in the coffer, and it was 20 if you were late. I asked questions through my translator. I learned that husbands take the money if the women try to save up individually, so they have an investment club where they pool tiny amounts to buy one big thing, like a goat for one woman or school fees for another. They each take turns according to their need and their situation. It was easy to do, as Fulgence had said, to express admiration for the ingenuity and the perseverance of these women. It was hard, though, to bring the conversation around to the subject of cows. Especially because even with my Muzungu eyes, I could not escape the clear fact that I wasn't the person to teach these women to fish. I could see the big picture that the cow thing wasn't going to work, but I was coming face to face with my own incompetence in their world, and I had no illusions anymore that I had a better alternative to offer. An older woman took a breath to speak. "The cows," she told me, "aren't working. There are too many people, there's not enough land or water, the herds are dying. It's not going to work for very much longer to live this way." Of course they already knew. Of course. They were living in the middle of it. "We try to sell things at the market," the woman continued, "but we have to borrow what we sell, and that's very expensive as a way to run a store. We know how to make honey, and the resorts are willing to buy it from us, but it costs money to make it sanitary for tourists and to package it properly. We need you to talk to the white mothers and ask them to help us." Of course they had a plan. They didn't need me to teach them how to fish. These women already knew how to fish, they just didn't have the fishing rods. The amounts for each project that the women were planning were in the hundreds of dollars. I wrote down their stories, I took their pictures, and I ran the simplest and easiest crowdfunding campaign of my life. The white mothers were moved by the story. Money poured in. We took the money, we used it to fund projects as a microloan, but with a cool catch. When the loan got paid back, it didn't get paid back to us, it got paid back to the community, and the council would decide who would borrow the money the next time and what it would be spent on. In this way, it could transform the whole village. But it transformed me too. I come from a family that prizes education, and when I was a kid, I was taught that I was pretty smart. I grew up in the 80s. I was told to finish my food because there were starving children in Africa, and I absorbed this idea that the reason they were starving was because they didn't know what we in North America knew. They didn't make as good decisions as we could because they needed education. Throwing that line of thinking away was one of the best decisions I ever made. Understanding that people are experts in their own contexts, or at the very least that I am not an expert in their context, has transformed my ability to help. There are solutions that my Muzungu eyes can't see, and it's okay not to be the wise person in the room. Now when I offer my voice or my financial resources, I look for solutions that are led by the people who are facing the problem. I assume that they know better than I do what's needed. And I've seen firsthand over and over again how much farther resources stretch when you spend them in this way. I expected this transformation to be humbling, maybe even painful. I expected that coming to understand my limited expertise and giving up power would be hard, but it's been the opposite. It's been freeing. It's painful to try to act with wisdom you don't have, and it's a lot of work, and it feels broken, and it leads to all this cumbersome process. I find myself thinking back to that night when I showed Salesh the chart of our congregational structure, how he shook his head and then said, "You don't need all that to have community, you just put people together and community appears." I don't believe it's that simple. In most North American contexts, I think there are community building skills Salesh uses without even realizing he has them, because he learned them as a child, things I didn't learn. One of those skills is a kind of power-sharing partnership, where each person finds the area that is theirs to be a steward of. This is better than the way I learned to do it. It creates better decisions, and it leaves more time for relationships. I'm telling you this story today partly because I know you have your own decisions to make about how you use your power in the world, but also because I believe the support we provide overseas as Unitarian Universalists is crucial, and that it's strongest when we are very aware of our Muzungu eyes. But the biggest reason is because I've used what I've learned from the Maasai over and over again in my life here. Being aware of what I can't see. Offering my opinion on decisions only after I've asked myself if I'm the wisest person to speak on the issue, what I have to offer. And putting relationships before process. Above all, leaving space for the connections that are not as simple as Salesh made them sound, but a lot simpler than I made them look with my chart. The best part of realizing what you don't know, I've found, is it allows space for you to learn and to form more honest connections, and to share power, and to keep processes down to only what is needed, leaving room to make a priority of human connection and a priority of building real community. My Muzungu eyes are improving.
Hi, this is Reverend Joanna Lubkin coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts, with a song called There Are More Waters Rising by Sarah Lynch Thomason. Let's learn it. I'll sing a line and invite you to sing it back at home. It goes like this. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Let's do that. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Good. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. Let's do that. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. Good. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Just like the beginning. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Good. The song repeats a bunch. You'll catch on, add harmonies, add some body percussion, tapping, snapping along. Okay, so let's sing. There are more. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to us. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. More fires burning. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to us. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. More people hungry. There are more people hungry, this I know, this I know. There are more people hungry, this I know. But you know what? We will wade through the waters. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. We will wade through the waters when they find their way to us. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. We will walk through the fires. We will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. We will walk through the fires, this I know. We will walk through the fires when they find their way to us. We will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. We will walk through the fires, this I know. We will break bread together. We will break bread together, this I know, this I know. We will break bread together, this I know. We will break bread together, feeding every type of hunger. We will break bread together, this I know, this I know. We will break bread together, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. Just that end again. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know. One more time. We will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. We will wade through the waters, this I know.
We extinguish this flame, but not the fire of our commitment, not the fire of our hope, not the fire of our gratitude. May we persevere when things are tough. May we collaborate when our own efforts are not enough. May we band together for a better world, for ourselves, for our children, and for the children of our children. Let's go forth in the world and continue our work of transformation that we are called to do.
So at the end of the service, there will be a slide that will have information if you would like to make a donation to our congregation. And then we'll also have an opportunity to go into breakout rooms. But before we do that, let's say together our UUFCO covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words. Then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place. Yeah, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place. Then our heart is in a holy place.
So, like every other Sunday, we'll have a breakout room and a conversation. And today's topic is, when have we done something with a larger group to bring some good into the world? So sharing our stories of collaboration, of like real direct assistance. And so depending on how many stay for the breakout rooms, we might just have one conversation, but we'll see about that in a second. And so that was